Wait, okay. The microphone's working. Yeah, I was like sitting here, the microphone's over here, this is over there, that's there. So, all right. So, yeah, just as I was logging in, so here we are. We're on page 253 of the Parinama method, reading it cover to cover. We are definitely getting closer to the back cover here, which is really yeah, it's kind of exciting. But this section is meaning and belief systems. And these are the secrets to the universe. These parts, the chapter 7, or the chapter 10, the seventh hub, no confusion potential there. Um, I was just thinking that these really are really like special and specific in terms of what they're pointing towards and how they really, and once again, how this works in concert, like this conceptual stuff that if the lower hub aspects where there's more feeling, there's more of a sense of security, there's more of a sense of like personal power in individuality and like freestanding personal power that isn't sort of requiring external validation, um, and love that can't be taken away because it's coming from the inside. Um, yeah, I mean, I had this moment, and I'll share this. It's pretty personal actually, because it was so intimate. But I had this moment where I just caught myself in a mirror, and it was just this like in there, like the other day, and it was this recognition that I that was beyond what I've ever experienced, which was this like just love. Like, it's like, um, and that's part of what we're doing here. But so a lot of the things, most of the stuff that's in Parinama should be on some level kind of familiar. It's pulled from the zeitgeist in its like various facets. So, like, as we're getting into the seventh hub, a lot of this stuff for anyone who could have made it this far, like, we're talking about the witness of consciousness, we're talking about, I don't know, inquiry, meaning, belief systems, this stuff that there isn't, this stuff is very likely for somebody, because this is like definitely not like the beginner's journey. I mean, this is really challenging. And for that, I salute you. Um, yeah, and I really respect and admire you for being on this. Yeah. So the thing is that what happens is that when there is more physical embodiment, when there's more emotional and like felt feeling, desire, aliveness, and these qualities, these conceptual, these like yoke in with something that has a lot more momentum. It's a lot stronger. So there's a lot of, like kind of philosophical people that would be, I think, the expression, the Vedic term is like sattvic, which is being very ethereal and very ungrounded. So you get, people that are like very like, yeah, hi, like I don't talk about politics and I'm, at the end of the day, it's karmic cycles and all this stuff that's like really kind of like is like very detached from an earthly reality. And by the way, like sattvic, these qualities like these qualities that are, very like are associated with aristocracy in general, so these qualities of being able to contemplate, or being removed from like being sort of like separated from like the throng of humanity. So it's like what we're doing here is we're trying to like really unify like the whole human being. So this stuff isn't this detached sort of philosophical notion of humanity. It's actually tied into humanity. Yeah. And the thing is that I'm actually not gonna go any further into that. It's not there. So we're talking about today, so meaning and belief systems. And so we are still in learning about the hub, but in the final partition of it. So we're in the themes, and let's get into it. So, yeah, I keep doing this spoiler thing, which, it occurs to me that people who, for somebody who would be watching this and think, "Well, you wrote the book, it can't be that surprising that you recall something related to the topic that is, like, actually in the book," which is fair play. That's very fair play. But, like, living inside my brain, it's weird because I really am sort of a tabula rasa kind of person, like, where it's just I kind of don't, like, hold a lot of so I'm always kind of taking new approaches. Yeah, I don't like yeah, so I don't know, but I don't know, I don't you don't need to worry about that, hopefully. TMI. That's the TMI part. Okay, so meaning and belief systems, let's talk about it. So we use meaning to organize and prioritize information. My cat is very adorable. That is not in the book. There are countless sensory inputs surrounding you in this very moment. What you choose to focus on and assign meaning to is filtered through your beliefs, which have been shaped by the circumstances of your development. And we tend to consider this interpretation to be fact. We react to our interpretations with our behavior, which further reinforces our viewpoint. Thus, our beliefs inform meaning, and meaning informs our beliefs without conscious intervention. It's a cycle of self fulfilling prophecy. And I would make one note here that the tangle, previously called the hairball of Parinama, came after the book, but this actually is like a pointing to that notion, which is the circularness of the formation of reflexes being created by early events and circumstances, and that those reflexes that are, and so much of it is beneath the conscious layer, especially because its formation happened in the early years before episodic memory was possible. So it's like we have these reflexes, so we make sense of them with belief systems. And make meaning of them. And so it's like creating rationalizations for them. And that's a lot of times where there's kind of, and that's what forms our sense of what reality is. So, and then what we think is reality, we project out into the world. And then the world responds to that. And so it just tightens this notion. So this is talking about the role belief systems play in this. And just to even make a point of this is that if you're watching this on a device, right, it's like what you choose to see is a decision. So you could be paying attention to the color of your device. You could be paying attention to the smudginess of the screen or dirt in the cracks. You could be paying attention to the fact its model and its relative age. And you could be paying attention to how much it cost. You could be paying attention to the fact that it was, how you procured it, where you bought it, what store you bought it in, your fortune for being lucky enough to be able to buy it without even having to spend a lot of time thinking about it, or the fact that you bought your, device and it's on a payment plan and, it's significant expense to you. You could be looking at the technology and be thinking like, wow, this is this has this type of processor and this type of memory, and this is the chip that's in it, and this is, and this is the software that I've downloaded on here, and this is understand the technical into it. I mean, there's kind of no end to anything that you're looking at in terms of what you could be paying attention to. You could be looking at like the manufacturer. You could be thinking about the politics of the internal materials that make. You could be thinking, wow, is their mined, Congolese mine materials from the Congo, who made this device, right? So the decision about like what we see as being like this is just a fixed reality. Like I see it and there and what how I perceive it and what I think about it. Like what I, what is like kind of is like the idea that that's just a thing is like this is another thing. It's like extraordinarily malleable in a particular way. But also like in terms of shifting it, the underlying reflexes and even the awareness of the mechanism is important for the evaluation process to see that. Okay. So let's keep going. Limiting beliefs are like, that's impossible, or I can't do that. Make decision that so limiting beliefs like that's impossible or I can't do that. Make decisions about outcomes before they've happened. Meaning and belief function in both conception and interpretation. Anodea Judith, the author, who you may remember from earlier in the book, writes, when the egg and sperm come together in biological conception, there's very little material substance, but a great deal of information. Likewise, our beliefs and concepts are ordering principles for information. They allow us to organize our data and give us guidance on how to behave. It is kind of like I love the reason I picked that quote was I really love the notion of life being this kind of convergence of sort of something, this like something, magical. So no matter how much you understand about science and biology, nobody's like, yeah, no, this is the spark of life still, not even close. Not even close. And information. This is kind of like convergence. I just like that notion. It's just kind of poetic. So the early programming of our hubs built within us a worldview factory that turns raw sensory material into predictable widgets. We're in the business of meaning making, and business is good. Yeah, so the early programming of our hubs built within us a worldview factory that turns raw sensory material into predictable widgets. We're in the business of meaning making, and business is good. So when beliefs are unexamined, we look through tinted glasses and believe that the world as we see it is how it exists for everyone. This can also include believing in our limitations and ferociously defending them with, I'm stuck in this job forever. I don't have time to go back to school, or I'll never have enough money. Our beliefs feel real because they were programmed by family and culture long before we could play an active role in deciding what they are. Remember, their early formation predates episodic memory. The challenge is that they are now so familiar that they get mistaken for identity, and examining and changing them is often disruptive to the relative peace achieved by maintaining the status quo. Oh shit. Okay. Wow. I'm going to reread that. So, our beliefs feel real because they are programmed by family and culture long before we could play an active role in deciding what they are. Remember, their early formation predates episodic memory. Episodic memory, just to be clear, is the ability to recall things in like at all, and then also sort of in a continuous sequence. So like one of the things is like you could have like these flashes of memory, like as a kid, like, oh, I remember my grandfather, like happy moments of like, or like scary moments, or like just like remembering a specific thing. Like I remember the braid of a girl in kindergarten, the wallpaper in my bedroom, like a specific dress. But episodic memory is when it's contextualized, when these things are sort of coded into a narrative and a story to make sense of them, in a sense. like, to make sense of them in a sense. So the challenge is that these episode so remember that the early formation of our belief systems are coded, and before we could, we before the formation of episodic memory. So the challenge is that we are now so familiar that they get mistaken, that's the beliefs, for identity, and examining and changing them is often disruptive to the relative peace achieved by maintaining the status quo. Yeah, I mean, this is very topical for Parinama, and I think this is one of this is something that's really worth mentioning in my own practice with this, my own experience with this, is that to reclaim the self involves some pretty disruptive seeing. Certainly in the last hub, I had, like, we really get into this, like, looking and seeing, and it's like looking at not only the memories and how they formed us, but the mechanisms of the things that did the formation. So the first step, so where people go, "Oh my gosh, navel gazing," it's like, okay, like the navel gazing about like, okay, I was shaped by this. And then the next kind of like, as you kind of begin to expand the aperture, like what we're seeing is like, like what is the function? What is the societal function that would benefit? What is the economic function? What is the religious, like what is the, and so beginning to see like, oh, that too. So it's really shocking, and I will tell you, like, one of the things that's really interesting, of note is that there kind of the sort of low grade chronic sense of, like, capitulating and not, and acquiescing and not, like, making waves is, the thing is that, like, right now in my own life, where I'm really breaking some long-standing bonds by, like, either standing up for myself or standing up for principles, that I hold as being humane. Um, it's interesting because, it's like the fear of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna ostracize myself," was huge for me. Huge 4th hub thing with this, like, it's just like I wouldn't want to be, um, cast out. But here's the thing with the 4th hub that I've never been taught, and I found through this, whatever, this, entity of this is, was that the internal love from inside, it makes it impossible to be cast away, and, honestly, the closeness of that relationship, my internal relationship, the intimacy, the closeness, the trust of that creates a grounded security that no relationship could ever give me, and it's almost like the closer I become to myself, the more at peace I am, even in tremendous turbulence. Which is like makes no sense. I wouldn't believe it unless somebody like, I wouldn't believe it if somebody had told me. It's such a direct experience. The fact that there are things that I'm facing right now in terms of, like, the end of, like, relationships that are both, like, personal and also professional, um, that it's, like, liberating. There's this sense of just relief, like, holding on to people who and even like like strategic relationships in your life, like people who hold power, um that where it's on this condition that you surrender an important part of yourself, that you conceal or distort an important part of yourself, like that is the release of that creates this like, like, it's the antithesis of what I'd expect, because I think the thing is like, "Oh my gosh," I'd feel, like, exposed and scared, and I lost, this and that, and it's like, it's not. It's not what my direct experience with it is. It's like a level of peace and trust in myself that's deeper as I become, kind of, you know, electively self-ostracized from a lot of personal, professional, et cetera, like, like all matter of relationship, where my concession of minimizing my integrity is no longer, on the table. So at peace, baby. Okay, so continuing onward. So when beliefs are unexamined, we already read that. Let's see. Okay, yeah, one last paragraph here. So in earlier hubs, interruptions involved invalidation and shaming that, combined with an education that limits or even forbids questioning, blocks access to our potential within this hub. Your curiosity is a muscle that can atrophy under the withering gaze of other people who have underdeveloped curiosity themselves. And like the fourth hub with love, victims of victims, in this hub, if children are not taught to inquire and be curious, they will not know how to teach their children. Yeah, it's like that bears repeating again. This is a really strong section. So once again, it's your curiosity is a muscle that can atrophy under the withering gaze of other people who have underdeveloped curiosity themselves. And like the fourth hub with love, where victims make victims, and the cycle of trauma or even the cycle of capacity continues down familial lines. In this hub, if children are not taught to inquire and be curious, they will not know how to teach their children. So the seventh hub offers the opportunity to transcend and evolve through consciously reclaiming and evaluating our early programming, and to use these advanced functions to expand our capacity in all the hubs. But keep in mind, this is hard work and requires patience and understanding. Otherwise, it just becomes another stressor. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And here's the thing. This is a section that I read. It still for me holds up, but that my own understanding of it is um has continued to evolve. It still works. It's still I don't feel like there isn't anything yet that I've read where I've been like, I mean, it holds up. But this is the thing, this is one of the things here where it's interesting that this is positioned as saying that that in this hub, advanced functions to expand our capacity, it advances our our inquiry and curiosity in this hub, expand capacity in the lower hubs. And I would now say that while that is true, um, the foundation of the lower hubs leading into the capacity, because I will say that the thing that expanding out beyond the status quo, beyond the programming, is very disruptive. And it's not necessarily safe in to the life that one has constructed. It is disruptive because it's like now all of a sudden it's like you see so like an example that the first that came up into my mind is that everyone's in a room together and now you see the big monster hulking in the corner, and it's like, do you just not so it's kind of like as you expand the aperture and everyone's kind of living like happily and eating their meal because they're not aware the monster is there, and it's like, okay, well now I know that there's stuff, I see more, I know more, I like that's not the best example, but I'm going to just kind of keep on rolling. The thing is that this the first hub of like establishing the sense of physical trust with yourself, because yeah, And as I've mentioned before, like, the thing about the first hub is not like, creating some notion of, like, "I am safe, everything's good all the time." It's actually creating yourself as this center of physical of, like, believing that you will do you have the capacity to solve problems. You have the capacity to work through things, and that, yes, the world is an uncertain and can potentially be a dangerous place. It just doesn't get changed through your perception. I mean, maybe it does. I don't know. Some everything is kind of relative, but not like. But so that the idea is that it's like removing hypervigilance to the point that that like the nervous system can actually sort of function more with more ease and actually be able to pull in the reflexes of reacting to things and solving problems and fixing things without being like flooded with fear and panic and all this stuff. And then, and then above that is having emotional capacity. It's like being able to feel alive, feel good feelings, feel more, to be more in touch with like desire. And then above that, it's talking, it's like pointing to your own personal power, the ability to stand on your own without external validation, that your power is actually an internally sourced aspect of yourself, like, which is what it is. And so instead of needing validation from people or having power over other people to sort of orient yourself, it's like that it's a freestanding it's freestanding. And then that the love, the like belonging is actually sort of like coming from the inside, is like the love of oneself. That connection is um an inside job, and that love is emanating. It's like an outward emanation, and that it's like the idea that it's like once I find, love from somebody else and a validation, but to like repair and like mend the division of the sense that of like any of these things like shames and fears and stuff, and to just like really like have this love, like these qualities, like they build on, they build on each other. And so they make it possible once we get to, so it's like I see this now more like it's 1 through 4, and then you've got 5 through 7. So it's like once you have that very physically embodied facet, and it's like it's your torso and and your body, that it's like the 5th hub is now to be able to express yourself because you feel safe within yourself. There's this sense of like, oh my gosh, if I reveal myself, then I'm going to be like separating myself, making myself vulnerable, like in a very particular way, or that you'll be able to withstand that you do. So you will separate yourself, but that you can withstand it. And to see in the 6th hub, to be able to see, to be willing to look and see for what things are, be able to see how we are shaped, be able to see the mechanisms that shape it. And then in this hub, to be able to understand, to come to greater understanding. Um, but this point here, which is, this notion, but keep in mind, this is hard work and requires patience and understanding. Otherwise, it just becomes another stressor. It's really, that's important. It's very important. But I think that the one thing I would say to this is that, yes, the patience and understanding, but um my thing would be to go down to the lower, like in the stressor aspect of this, in the evaluation, is to have the tools of the earlier hub practices to turn back to, in terms of like physical practice of grounding yourself, going out in nature, tapping, even using, any of them, the charging, discharging, and the techniques and exercises, like turning to those. And they're all in the, if you don't want to read, they're in videos, just scroll down in the lives, to turn to those and have those as tools to bring yourself back into your physicality. Because the thing is in terms of like the stressor, and this was something, in say this, I guess, as a final thing is that, when I was writing this book, as it may be apparent, is the voluminous and the intensity of it is extraordinary. So I was really um, having to process a lot of very like intense notions because like one of the cycles in this and writing it was like my own personal processing. So it was like my narrative and my life as it relates to this. Um, and so it just the experiences, and so it's like I'm writing in the book about like how to process some of the stuff I was figuring out how to process, in terms of like overwhelm. But one of the things I remember, and there's a picture I drew that wound up being the inspiration for like the ginger people that are at the headers of the techniques and exercises that have the prompt. But there's this thing where all of a sudden I realized I was like, I feel like when I get overwhelmed, I would feel like a guitar string that was plucked, and the feeling of being everywhere and nowhere, just like like there's just no. And so that was um it's like so unsettling. And the picture I drew was like all the ginger people all stacked all over each other, and then there was one where they were all lined up. Um, but the way that the discovery for me was to just go into nature and sit and be in nature and try to have like skin to nature contact. But whatever, and for just even 15 minutes to be like, oh, that was like regulating me, so I could come back to this like wild ride of writing this book. Or it's like, I don't even call it a book. It's like a thing that is contained in a book. It's like it's wild. So yeah, I think that's all I have for this. It's a good section though. This one's good. Meaning, belief systems. There's a lot in there. So next we'll get to inquiry, questions, and answers. So yeah, okay, here's the thing I'll say. One last thing I'll say with this in terms of like this thing about like being gentle and like having the lower hub establishments like about and becoming another stressor is that part of the thing. Okay. So so one notion I'm gonna present here is that it's like, the feeling of being like, yeah, I know how to solve this problem, but I'm not doing it. And like creating, kind of division where there's just this kind of aspect of yourself that's at war with your greater good, um, like malevolent aspect of yourself versus a adaptation that was once incredibly helpful that now is maladaptive. That's the whole thing. And the other thing is like, yeah, you probably don't know how to do it. So because you have you have like some information about how to solve a thing that you're trying to do, there's like, the more than, one way to skin a cat, which is the worst thing ever. Like a curse to that analogy. But like the thing is there's the way that you do something, the manner in which you approach it, has to work for you. And part of that manner of approaching it is it needs to like catch the kite. It needs to create the energy to do it. So if it's like, look, the way that, it's like, like another terrible analogy, but it's like if you're like, okay, I want to, get in shape. I'll use get in shape. I want to get, if somebody's like, I want to get in shape, the idea that it's like the only way to get in shape is run, or the only way to get in shape is go to the gym. The only way to, so it's like, and I don't go to the gym, so I'm a piece of shit. Like, and it's like, no, like the thing to get in shape is to do something that is like that you like movement that you enjoy. So it's like you haven't found the movement that you enjoy. I mean, like that, like look at that. You haven't found the way to connect with it. Is it like having someone else that helps you do it? Is it like just and the whole thing is that it's like instead of this thing, it's like, I know how to do it and I'm just being an asshole. Like that's a belief system. It's absolutely like incorrect. I will say absolutely. Because there's something as long as it's malevolent, as long as the thing is like where you're looking at like the mechanism that's holding you back is some like shitty part of yourself, immediately that is an immediate flag on the play. Like it's really the thing is that it's like there is a way that is like well and there's a way. And so okay, where am I getting to with this? The point I'm getting to with this is that in order to find that way, there needs to be an openness and a receptivity to its existence being something you don't understand yet. I've talked about this in other readings, but whatever. There's like 300 of them. So there's a few readings. There's a few of them. So the thing is that you need to be able to ask a question. And we're going to get into this next time, but I'm going to talk to this right now. There needs to be the asking of the question. How do I? So I'm going to use this example. It's terrible, but it's like for whatever reason, the only one that's coming to mind. It's like, how do I get in shape? And the thing that blocks that is like anything that's like, well, you have to like notice that quality that always is like raising its hand and speaking up and talking over you. Like notice that adaptation. This is an adaptation inside of yourself. It's a stowaway passenger of a voice of somebody that's not you and that will keep correcting you. Like who the fuck, you're not correcting yourself. Like you're curious. You're like, how do I do this? And then somebody goes, well, you do it by this. Like, it's like, yeah, okay, notice that. There's not two of you in there. There's just you, and there's like adapted beliefs and reflexes and behaviors. And so the thing is like that voice, it needs to become safe enough that you're willing to see. You're willing to be receptive to things that might be inconvenience to a status quo. So, if you're asking the question, like, how do I make work? How do I serve the world? You ask it in earnest and you surrender it as a question. And you demonstrate repeatedly your receptivity to knowing the answer to it. You don't get the answer right away. Why should this force trust you if you've never listened to it before? You have to really like you're asking for like a connection with something that's extraordinary. So it's like to show the in earnest, to ask in earnest without this like, well, how am I supposed to do? Like that's not it. It's how do I do this? How do I best serve you? How do I best serve you? And I'll hear what you have to say. It's probably not going to be what I want to hear. It's almost never what you want to hear. Right? I don't know. Maybe for other people, it's always like, they're like, oh no, it's always great. Not for me. Not for me. So we'll talk more about that. But the point, I guess, like to full circle this, is the point is that without the foundational lower hub, there is just the matter of like making it not feel unsafe to take in new information. So if if it's like if it's a requirement, to belong, we have to like hide parts of ourselves that are real. Like we have to, like important parts of ourselves to people. Important parts of ourselves. Like we always have to hide parts of ourselves to people. It's just not, it's like, but like the fact that we're like having to squash and diminish parts of ourselves and that like wound up being like chronically suppressed and denied to the point that they're like suffocating. or we're just like our emotions have the capacity has been diminished to like to a significant point, and we don't feel physically safe. The idea of taking in new information, like a good example would be to say, like, what if, what is my career? What am I supposed to do for work? What am I supposed to do? And it's like being incredibly receptive and open. And the answer comes in, you should be a teacher. Teacher, you're a teacher. And the immediate reaction is teachers don't make money. No, right? Like, that's a good example of that. Like, where it's a first hub thing will be like, I can't physically be safe. I don't want to surrender myself to something that would make me financially insecure. Like, good. That's a perfect example of that. So if that's established, so yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of nuance to this. This isn't just like follow the 4 steps to, complete whatever. It's like you've got to enter into this kind of lush forest. And yeah, why not? Why not point it out? The cover of the book. The forest, the fire, the foundation. And then you have the cosmos, the twinkling stars in here, and you have the oil slick, which is this this sort of dynamic ongoing movement and shifting of the same matter revealing itself to appear vividly and wildly different, but being composed of the same stuff. Yep. That's it. There's more. Yeah. I mean, even the thing of the intention of the looking like a neon sign. You can see the oil slick. Some of the printings have different like clarity about the oil slick. It's interesting. Different people's books have different kind of whatever. But anyhow, all right, that is it. That is it. We've transformed enough of everything today. So, okay, as always, all comments get answered. Thank you for any interaction. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. And what else have we got here? Yeah, if there's anything, if you don't have my direct contact information, you can DM me at the Parinoma Method, on Instagram, with anything that you don't want to share publicly, but you have questions. I do not. It matters to me to see what you're thinking about as it relates to this. I care a lot. Okay, so what have we got here? I'm just going to look for 1 second before I roll off. Yeah, this is really good. Yeah, the next sections we've got the inquiry, questions and answers, and then we have stillness and space, patterns and fractals, wonder and awe, sense of humor, amazing grace, and the higher power. And then we've got the interruptions and stressors, where we get into standards of perfection or of purity and perfection in spiritual abuse. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of perfection and purity as notions of like, I don't know. I heard clean and pristine yesterday, which I liked. I like that. I don't like perfection and purity. I like clean and pristine. Okay. Anyway, that's it for now. I'll see you next time. Bye.